The encrypted message arrived at dawn, cutting through Ouagadougou's morning calm. Like lightning crackling across the Sahel sky, Ibrahim Traoré's aide hesitated before entering the presidential office, knowing this invitation would change everything, forever. The sender's identity made the proposal both intriguing and dangerous. A direct challenge from America's political establishment, a live television debate with Patel, broadcast globally from Washington's most prestigious studios. The timing seemed deliberately calculated, coinciding with Burkina Faso's latest sovereignty declarations that had rattled Western capitals. The world will be watching this unprecedented confrontation unfold between African authenticity and American arrogance. Inside the modest presidential quarters, Traoré studied the formal invitation with measured intensity that had defined his leadership style. His weathered hands, scarred from years of military service, traced the official letterhead, while his sharp mind calculated risks. This wasn't just another diplomatic meeting or routine regional conference appearance designed for empty protocol. The American establishment was calling him out directly, publicly challenging his vision for African independence and self-determination. He understood the sophisticated trap being set, but also recognized the extraordinary opportunity presented before him, a rare chance to speak unfiltered truth to global power on the world's biggest media stage. The morning light filtered through traditional wooden shutters, casting dancing shadows across detailed maps of West Africa. Traoré's closest advisors would arrive soon, each bringing their own concerned strategies and deep expertise. But in this quiet, contemplative moment, he felt the profound weight of his people's collective hopes. Children playing in Ouagadougou's dusty streets deserved a future completely free from foreign interference and exploitation. Farmers working in remote villages needed someone with courage to defend their ancestral lands against corporate greed. This invitation represented more than personal vindication. It was fundamentally about Africa's dignity, sovereignty, and rightful place. His phone buzzed insistently with urgent messages from international media outlets already speculating wildly about the encounter. Social networks exploded with countless hashtags and dramatic predictions about the upcoming ideological clash between civilizations. Traoré deliberately set the device aside and walked slowly to his window overlooking the bustling capital. The rich red earth of Burkina Faso stretched endlessly toward distant horizons, reminding him powerfully why this fight mattered. He would accept this dangerous invitation and show the entire world what authentic African leadership truly looked like. The presidential conference room buzzed with urgent energy as Traoré carefully selected inner circle, gathered around polished mahogany tables. Detailed maps, classified documents, and state-of-the-art laptops covered every available surface while experienced advisors debated strategy with passionate intensity. Defense. Minister Celestine Ouagadougou paced restlessly near the window, her distinguished military background evident in every calculated movement. Foreign Affairs Advisor Mamadou Sow methodically pulled up video clips of Patel's previous interviews and aggressive congressional testimonies. Communications Director Fatima Kabour studied complex social media trends and comprehensive international news coverage with analytical precision. Each trusted person understood the profound magnitude of this historic moment for their nation's future. He'll undoubtedly try to paint you as a dangerous, destabilizing force, where Drago warned. Seriously, pointing to detailed intelligence reports. The Western media establishment has been systematically building this false narrative for months now. Every single reform we've courageously made gets deliberately twisted into dangerous radicalism by their biased press. Sow nodded grimly, scrolling through inflammatory headlines that consistently portrayed Burkina Faso's sovereignty moves as existential threats. The room fell into contemplative silence as they absorbed the daunting reality of their monumental challenge. This wasn't simply about defending reasonable policies. It was about fundamentally changing deeply entrenched global perceptions. Years of sophisticated colonial conditioning had systematically programmed the world to instinctively doubt African leadership capability. Traoré listened intently while slowly, sipping traditional Bissap tea, his naturally calm demeanor contrasting sharply with his team's visible tension. "What are Patel's most exploitable known weaknesses?" he asked thoughtfully, studying revealing footage of the former official's characteristically combative style. Kababor expertly highlighted specific moments where Patel's insufferable arrogance had dramatically backfired in previous high-profile interviews and hearings. He consistently underestimates opponents and relies heavily on crude interruption tactics to avoid substantial arguments. She observed astutely. Sao added crucial intelligence about Patel's surprisingly limited understanding of complex African geopolitics and economics. The American's dangerous confidence frequently exceeded his actual knowledge, creating valuable opportunities for devastating strategic counterattacks. As the intense afternoon heat outside reached its suffocating peak, the strategy session reached its absolutely critical phase. Traoré's dedicated team compiled comprehensive briefing materials covering everything from detailed economic statistics to powerful historical precedents. They meticulously rehearsed potential question sequences and practiced measured responses to likely provocations and personal accusations. The president's experienced speaking coach arrived to fine-tune sophisticated delivery techniques for maximum television impact, elaborate security. Protocols were carefully finalized for the high-stakes Washington trip. Though everyone understood the real decisive battle would be purely intellectual, by evening they had successfully transformed nervous energy into laser-focused determination and absolutely unshakable confidence. In his luxurious Virginia penthouse overlooking the PTOAC, Kash Patel reviewed extensive briefing materials with characteristic overconfidence in self, assured swagger. His expensive mahogany desk displayed carefully arranged folders containing detailed intelligence reports about Burkina Faso's recent political developments. The former Trump administration official genuinely relished rare opportunities to demonstrate supposed American intellectual superiority on prestigious international stages. His experienced media team had already prepared comprehensive victory lap interviews for, after what they assumed would be an easy debate encounter. Patel saw this high-profile confrontation as yet another golden chance to showcase superior Western democratic values against primitive African authoritarianism. The predetermined outcome seemed absolutely certain in his arrogant mind, requiring only competent execution of time-tested tactics. "This guy is just another typical African strongman," Patel dismissively told his closest advisor while casually reviewing Traoré's biographical information. "Same tired playbook as all the rest. Predictable anti-Western rhetoric, dangerous economic nationalism, military background giving him undeserved credibility." His assembled team nodded enthusiastically in agreement, eagerly sharing inflammatory articles that consistently portray Burkina Faso's leader as unstable and dangerous. They discussed well-worn talking points about democracy, human rights, and international law with casual dismissiveness and contempt. The entire preparation felt more like rehearsed theater than serious intellectual engagement with genuinely complex geopolitical realities. Patel's extensive experience in Washington's power corridors had completely convinced him that supreme confidence mattered infinitely more than substantive knowledge. The comprehensive strategy meeting continued in Patel's private study, surrounded by impressive photographs with powerful American politicians and officials. His ambitious communications director enthusiastically outlined numerous media opportunities following what they confidently assumed would be Traoré's inevitable public embarrassment. Prestigious cable news bookings were already scheduled, op-ed pieces professionally drafted, and sophisticated social media campaigns prepared for immediate deployment will strategically position this as a valuable teaching moment about American global leadership. The director explained with obvious enthusiasm. Patel smiled broadly, vividly imagining the glowing headline celebrating his intellectual dominance over another confused African leader. His previous encounters with foreign officials had consistently followed predictable patterns of American superiority and foreign inadequacy. As the long evening approached, Patel's confident team finalized their aggressive approach with barely concealed contempt for their opponent's capabilities. Research assistants compiled what they considered absolutely damaging information about Burkina Faso's ongoing economic challenges and security issues. The comprehensive briefing materials deliberately emphasized Traoré's military background as clear evidence of authoritarian tendencies and democratic deficits. Patel practices most aggressively intimidating questioning techniques, specifically designed to fluster and intimidate inexperienced foreign leaders. His supreme confidence bordered dangerously on pure arrogance built entirely on racist assumptions about African intellectual inferiority and Western sophistication. The elaborate trap was perfectly set, or so he foolishly believed, for another effortless victory. The CNN studio in Washington hummed with absolutely unprecedented energy as skilled technicians prepared for what everyone sensed would be television history. Cameras positioned strategically captured every possible angle while experienced lighting specialists created the perfect dramatic atmosphere for confrontation production assistants. Skewered frantically between multiple control rooms coordinating complex satellite feeds from Ouagadougou and managing overwhelming international media requests the network seasoned. Executives clearly recognize this debate's tremendous potential to become a defining moment in contemporary geopolitical discourse. Security personnel maintained heightened alertness throughout the building, fully understanding the profound global significance of this unprecedented encounter between American and African leadership philosophies. Behind the scenes, electric tension crackled through studio corridors as stressed staff prepared for potential diplomatic explosions and international incidents. Nervous makeup artists worked with unusual intensity, fully understanding that their subjects would face millions of viewers across multiple continents. Technical crews repeatedly tested sophisticated translation equipment and multiple backup systems, ensuring no communication failures would mar this historic broadcast. Legal advisors meticulously reviewed content, guidelines, and complex international broadcasting regulations with unusual thoroughness and attention. The experienced production team felt unprecedented pressure unlike anything they had experienced in routine political programming. In separate green rooms, both men prepared with vastly different emotional approaches and mental preparations for battle. Patel reviewed his detailed notes one final time, carefully adjusting his expensive tie and practicing his most intimidating expressions. His unshakable confidence remained completely intact, built on years of Washington power games and media manipulation. Across the hallway, Traoré sat quietly, in meditation, his hands folded in traditional prayer, while mentally connecting with ancestors' wisdom. His profound calm presence contrasted sharply with the surrounding chaos and nervous energy throughout the building. The African leader's natural stillness radiated genuine strength that impressed even skeptical American production staff. As the crucial broadcast time approached, the studio audience filled with distinguished diplomats, journalists, and academics from around the world. African ambassadors occupied coveted front row seats there, expressions carefully mixing hope with concern for their continent's reputation. American foreign policy experts whispered confident predictions about Traoré's expected poor performance against seasoned Washington insider tactics. International correspondents prepared urgent live reports for their respective networks and news organizations worldwide. The charged atmosphere resembled a gladiatorial arena more than a typical television studio, with everyone sensing history about to unfold. The red recording light activated as veteran moderator Anderson Cooper introduced both guests to millions of global viewers. Patel sat confidently in his perfectly tailored navy suit, American flag pin gleaming brilliantly under studio lights. His carefully practiced posture radiated Washington insider authority, hands folded with practiced political precision and calculated media composure. Across from him, Traoré appeared in simple traditional West African attire, his commanding presence undeniable despite the understated appearance. The visual contrast was immediately striking. American corporate, polished versus authentic African dignity and quiet strength. Cooper's opening remarks emphasize the genuinely historic nature of this unprecedented diplomatic encounter on live television. Gentlemen, let's begin with the fundamental question of sovereignty, Cooper announced, his experienced voice carrying unusual gravity. Patel leaned forward eagerly, sensing his first golden opportunity to establish intellectual dominance over his opponent. Mr. President Traoré, your recent controversial decisions have concerned many international observers about democratic backsliding and authoritarian tendencies. A subtle loaded question contained embedded assumptions about Western democratic superiority and African governmental inadequacy. Traoré listened calmly, his steady eyes never leaving Patel's face. As the obvious setup became clear, the sophisticated trap was being laid with typical Western media bias and manipulation. Traoré's measured response began with a tone that immediately shifted the studio's energy and emotional atmosphere. Mr. Cooper, the question itself reveals a fundamental problem we face as African nations today. His dignified accent carried profound authority that resonated through television speakers across continents and time zones. When African leaders make independent decisions for African people, suddenly we're labeled authoritarian by those same nations. Patel's confident smirk began to fade as he recognized unexpected intellectual sophistication in his opponent's strategic framing. The African president had immediately recontextualized the entire debate around colonial mentality and Western paternalism. But Mr. Traoré, Patel interrupted with practiced aggression. International law and democratic norms exist for good reasons. His voice carried the condescending tone typical of Washington establishment figures addressing foreign leaders they considered inferior. Your military background and recent constitutional changes raise legitimate concerns about democratic governance and human rights. The direct attack was carefully designed to put Traoré on the defensive about his legitimacy and credentials. Studio audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the confrontational atmosphere escalating beyond normal diplomatic discourse parameters. Both men locked eyes intensely, the real, intellectual battle about to begin in earnest. Patel's supreme confidence reached its absolute peak as he prepared to deliver what he considered the decisive blow. Let's talk about your questionable relationship with Russia and China. Mr. Traoré, he began with prosectorial intensity. The studio lights reflected brilliantly off his polished American flag pin as he leaned forward aggressively. His voice carried the practiced authority of someone accustomed to intimidating foreign officials in Washington hearings. Your government has expelled French forces while welcoming Wagner mercenaries and Chinese infrastructure loans with questionable terms. The serious accusation hung in the air like a weapon designed to destroy credibility. Patel's team had carefully crafted this moment as the knockout punch that would expose African hypocrisy. The former Trump official's relentless attack continued with escalating aggression and barely concealed contempt for his opponent. You claim to fight for sovereignty while selling your country to the highest bidder from Moscow and Beijing. His accusatory finger pointed directly at Traoré, a gesture designed for maximum television impact and dramatic effect. This isn't genuine sovereignty. It's just changing colonial masters while pretending to represent African independence and dignity. The studio audience gasped, audibly at the directness of the assault and personal nature of the attack. Patel's satisfied smile suggested complete confidence in his opponent's inevitable collapse under such sustained intellectual pressure. Years of Washington power plays had convinced him this approach was absolutely foolproof against unprepared foreign leaders. Behind his aggressive facade, Patel felt the familiar, intoxicating rush of anticipated victory over another confused African politician. His previous encounters with foreign officials had consistently followed predictable patterns of American dominance and foreign inadequacy. The comprehensive briefing materials had painted Traoré as just another military strongman lacking sophisticated understanding of geopolitics. Your people deserve better than becoming pawns in a new Cold War, he continued, relentlessly. The attack was skillfully designed to portray concern for Burkina Faso citizens while undermining their chosen leader. His extensive media training had taught him to weaponize humanitarian language against inconvenient foreign governments. The studio fell into tense silence as Patel completed his most devastating assault, absolutely confident he had delivered an unanswerable blow. His communications team prepared victory statements while monitoring social media reactions to their boss's performance. International observers leaned forward, anticipating Traoré's inevitable stumbling response to such sophisticated accusations about geopolitical alignment. The American establishment's playbook seemed to be working perfectly according to decades of successful precedent. Camera operators zoomed in on both faces, capturing what they expected would be the moment of African defeat. Patel sat back smugly, savoring what he believed was certain triumph over another outmatched foreign leader. The studio atmosphere became absolutely electric as Traoré slowly rose from his chair, his deliberate movement commanding absolute attention. His traditional robes seemed to carry the weight of ancestral wisdom. As cameras captured his dignified bearing, the African president's eyes held steady contact with Patel, while a slight, knowing smile played across his weathered features. Mr. Patel, he began, his voice carrying quiet authority that filled the entire studio space effortlessly. Anderson Cooper instinctively leaned forward, sensing something unprecedented about to unfold before millions of global viewers. The silence stretched like a taut wire, pregnant with historical significance and dramatic tension. You speak of changing colonial masters as if Africa should remain grateful for any master at all. His words cut through the studio, air with surgical precision, each syllable carefully chosen for maximum impact. Traoré's calm delivery contrasted sharply with Patel's earlier aggression, making the Americans' approach seem crude and unsophisticated. This reveals everything wrong with Western thinking about our continent and our people's capacity for independence. The cameras captured Patel's expression, shifting from confidence to uncertainty as he realized his opponent was operating on a completely different level. International observers in the audience began to straighten in their seats, recognizing intellectual firepower they hadn't expected. The devastating counterpunch continued as Traoré's voice gained momentum while maintaining perfect composure and dignified bearing. You ask why we expel French forces after 60 years of military presence that brought us nothing. His strategic pause allowed the implications to sink in before, delivering the crushing follow-up blow with surgical precision. Perhaps the better question is, why did America need 20 years to lose in Afghanistan? The studio erupted in shocked gasps as the comparison hit like a thunderbolt, reframing the entire narrative. Patel's face went pale as his foundational assumptions crumbled under the weight of historical reality and undeniable facts. You lecture us about sovereignty while your country has military bases in over 70 nations worldwide. Traoré's final words landed with devastating impact, each fact precisely deployed like ammunition in intellectual warfare. His calm demeanor made the destruction complete, showing strength through restraint rather than aggression like his opponent. The studio audience sat stunned, processing the complete reversal they had just witnessed on live television. Patel's mouth opened slightly, but no words emerged. His prepared responses useless against such unexpected sophistication and strategic thinking. The hunter had become the hunted in less than 2 minutes of devastating counterattack. The studio audience erupted in absolutely unprecedented chaos as the impact of Traoré's words reverberated through the building. Diplomats from African nations leaped to their feet, applauding with enthusiasm they couldn't contain despite formal protocol. European and American observers sat frozen, their assumptions about African intellectual capacity shattered in real time. Anderson Cooper struggled desperately to maintain Control as voices rose throughout the studio space with excitement. Camera operators captured every reaction, knowing they were documenting a historic moment that would be replayed endlessly. The carefully orchestrated television environment had transformed into something resembling a political rally or a revolutionary gathering. Social media platforms exploded with instant reactions from viewers across 6 continents watching the confrontation unfold live. Traoré vs. Patel began trending globally within minutes as millions shared clips of the devastating comeback sequence. African Twitter celebrated, with images of traditional warriors and independence fighters, connecting this moment to centuries of resistance. American political commentators scrambled frantically to process what they had just witnessed, their pre-written analyses suddenly irrelevant. The hashtag #UGSavage comeback dominated trending topics while memes featuring Traoré's calm expression spread like wildfire across platforms. In the studio control room, producers frantically adjusted camera angles to capture the full scope of audience reaction. Network executives realized they had stumbled onto television gold that would generate discussions for months to come. International news networks immediately began preparing special coverage of what pundits were already calling the Ouagadougou Moment. Phone calls flooded the networks, offices from media outlets requesting immediate access to footage and interviews. The production team struggled to maintain broadcast quality while documenting this unprecedented diplomatic earthquake happening in real time. Patel remained seated. His earlier confidence completely evaporated as he processed the complete destruction of his prepared strategy. His communications team watched helplessly as their carefully crafted narrative collapsed under the weight of Traoré's intellectual superiority. The Americans' face showed confusion, anger, and embarrassment in rapid succession as cameras captured every emotion. His prepared follow-up questions seemed pathetic compared to the sophistication of his opponent's response to the initial attack. The hunter had become prey, and everyone in the studio could see the transformation happening before their eyes. The immediate aftermath transformed into a global media frenzy as news organizations worldwide scrambled to analyze the confrontation's implications. CNN extended the broadcast, definitely recognizing they had captured a defining moment in contemporary international relations. Phone calls flooded newsrooms. From Accra to Brussels as editors demanded comprehensive coverage of the unexpected turn of events African news. Networks prepared special programming celebrating what many call the continent's greatest diplomatic victory in decades. International correspondents filed urgent reports describing the complete reversal they had witnessed during the live television encounter. Within hours, the explosive clip had generated over 50 million views across multiple platforms and social media networks. African universities organized impromptu viewing parties where students celebrated Traoré's intellectual triumph over Western condescension and arrogance. European diplomatic circles buzzed with uncomfortable conversations about recalibrating their approach to African leadership and political engagement. American foreign policy experts found themselves defending positions they had never questioned before this devastating public challenge. The video became required. Viewing in political science classrooms from Lagos to London as professors analyzed its profound implications. Global think tanks immediately began producing analysis pieces attempting to understand how their assessments had been so fundamentally wrong. The Brookings Institution, Council on Foreign Relations, and Chatham House all issued statements acknowledging the need for deeper engagement. African policy experts, who had long been marginalized, suddenly found themselves in high demand for commentary and analysis. Stock markets in West Africa experienced unusual activity as investors reconsidered the region's political stability and leadership quality. Currency exchanges reflected new confidence in Burkina Faso's economic potential under such sophisticated political guidance and strategic thinking. The confrontation's impact rippled through diplomatic channels as ambassadors worldwide reported back to their capitals about changing dynamics. French officials quietly acknowledged that their former colonial policies might require substantial revision and reconsideration of traditional approaches. Chinese and Russian representatives noted increased interest in African partnerships based on mutual respect rather than paternalistic relationships. United Nations corridors buzz with discussions about African representation in global governance structures and decision-making processes. The 2-minute exchange had fundamentally altered international perceptions of African political capability and intellectual sophistication in ways that would reshape diplomacy for years. That devastating 2-minute exchange proved that African leadership deserves global respect, not Western condescension. Traoré's intellectual masterclass left Patel speechless and changed international perceptions forever. What did you think of this historic moment? Subscribe for more untold stories of African excellence and share your thoughts below.